What I believe that might be very dangerous. There are two schools now. One that is winning within the NATO and United States of America is what they're going to do in the next 6 weeks. And what I believe they're going to do at the end of this week or by the end of next week, they're going to change their position not only on a tactical but a bit of a strategical level, which means that they will try to aim to target and to harm very much Russians regarding their ammo storages, but not only that, oil resources, gas storages and everything else. If that happens, they still believe that Putin will not strike back, that he might hit very hard Ukraine, but not any of NATO countries. That's how I see the situation, and that's what I forecast, that's what I foresee, which you'll be able to see, to notice, to check it within month and a half. But what I think is that Putin won't be very hesitant with stronger strike back. We'll see. But when it happens, then you'll really believe that it will be a better position for anyone to get the real truce or ceasefire in 40 days or 60 days. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that.
In the month of November, Ukraine gave up a record 725 square kilometers of territory, the largest loss since the positional war started in 2022. This trend is very worrying, and there's no reason to expect the situation to calm down in December either, with the cautionary words of Emil Kastahelmi from the Finnish-backed Blackbird Group in an interview with the Newsweek newspaper. If we assume the Russians have enough manpower and equipment for the coming months, it's likely they'll continue attacking aggressively. There are no immediate indications that the Russians would run out of steam in the near future, the Finnish expert said. As before, 65% of the 1,170 battles were concentrated on the Pokrovsk, Kurakhove front and near Velika, Novosilka. The full offensive strength of the Russian armed forces has been directed at Kurakhove. While they are making daily progress, the Ukrainian forces have been able to hold the lines in Yelisavetivka, Romanivka, and Hanivka by December. These settlements have been in a semi-encirclement for some time, yet the armed forces of Ukraine continue to demonstrate some defensive capacity. Last week, Russian forces launched over 320 attacks in the Pokrovsk direction, marking one of the heaviest offensive efforts of the entire fall campaign. However, their gains have been modest, and the offensive appears to be slowing. The northern flank remains intact, with Russian efforts concentrated on forming a southern pincer to encircle Pokrovsk and prepare for a direct assault. Their primary target is the village of Shevchenko, located some 3.5 kilometers south of Pokrovsk. Similar to the offensive on Pokrovsk, the Russian advance directly toward Velika Novosilka has slowed just outside the village, and instead, the Russian army has shifted to flanking maneuvers. Even though the Russian offensive may be slowing on some fronts, for reasons unknown, it doesn't take away from the fact that November saw the fastest Russian pace of advance since 2022. This has no doubt caused alarm both in the Ukrainian command, but also with their Western backers. Ukrainian President Zelensky said that Kiev may require diplomatic means to liberate some Russian-held territories, as he admitted, according to the Newsweek, that his army lacked the strength to do that. We have to find diplomatic solutions, he told the Japanese news agency Kyodo. This shift in rhetoric from Kiev is made more palpable considering President-elect Donald Trump's promise to end the war, which, if done in its current state, would cede large swaths of land to Russia. According to Reuters, there has been some controversy and confusion on what exactly Trump's proposals are. In a report on the 4th of December, the Western publication claims that there are now three main proposals. One from the candidate for the post of Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Mr. Keith Kellogg, another from Vice President J.D. Vance, and a third from former U.S. Ambassador to Germany and Director of National Intelligence Richard Grenell. Kellogg's plan, prepared by him in co-authorship with former Executive Secretary of the U.S. National Security Council, Fred Fletz, suggests that Washington will deprive Ukraine of military assistance if Kiev does not start negotiations with Moscow. Russia's refusal to negotiate, on the contrary, will lead to an increase in American support for Ukraine. According to this plan, the parties should agree on a ceasefire on the basis of the available front line. J.D. Vance set out his ideas back in September. In his opinion, the deal should include a demilitarized zone on the existing front line, and this zone will be strongly strengthened to prevent further invasions by Russia. His proposal implies the refusal of Ukraine to join NATO. Grenell, speaking in July at the Bloomberg News Roundtable on the sidelines of the U.S. Republican Party Congress, proposed to create autonomous regions in eastern Ukraine and objected to the country's accession to NATO in the future. The main point to note is that all three proposals, as Reuters notes, agree that the issue of Ukraine's membership in NATO is excluded from the agenda. This is likely to face resistance from Vladimir Zelensky, who made the invitation to NATO part of his own victory plan, as well as from European allies and some American lawmakers, analysts, and former national security officials say.
The second is invitation to NATO and steps forward with NATO.
So yesterday's video focused primarily on the Kupiansk and KURSK fronts, and although I touched briefly on the Donbass, today I will focus more on Kurakhove, Pokrovsk, and Velika Novosilka. Additionally, by way of an update, I have just created an online shop where you can buy merchandise with the WIPS logo on it. Link is in the description, and here are some of the merchandise that I offer. So if you wish to support my independent research and this channel, leave a super thanks donation, or perhaps consider purchasing an item from the shop, which has a limited discount for the next 2 weeks. And with that, let's get into it.
Заезжаем в город Kurakhove, забирать 8 человек, из них 2 детей.
On Kurakhove's southern flank, the Russian offensive has slowed from advancing kilometers per day to meters. Russian forces are still attacking Ukrainian villages along the Suki River, pushing from the south via Trudove and from the north through Dali. Their primary focus is on Ospenivka, where they aim to cut off a significant portion of Ukrainian defenders. Meanwhile, they are also striking Romanivka and Hanivka. Despite this pressure, the defense forces continue to counterattack. The Russian forces decided to also extend the front along the river, advancing toward Sukiyali and expanding the gray zone in that area. To the north of Kurakhove, Russian troops have fully captured Beretsky and moved along the reservoir to Stari Terny, where fighting is ongoing. As at today, however, the reports are that the Russians are in the process of consolidating their positions in Stari Terny. Their goal is to break through the Ukrainian defenses and reach the highway behind Kurakhove's defenders. For now, they have reached a bombed-out dam that will make further advancement extremely difficult. From there, they will likely attempt to move west toward the interfluve of the Vovcha and Solona rivers. The terrain in this region favors defense, providing hope that the armed forces of Ukraine will hold the line for an extended period. Meanwhile, the battle for Kurakhove itself continues. Russian forces have made significant progress here, capturing key sites in the city's central area. This has forced the defense forces to retreat to the western part of the city, where they are constructing defenses around the remains of the destroyed thermal power station. However, Sergei Gurets, a prominent Ukrainian military analyst, argues that after the capture of Stari Terny, which facilitates a Russian advance further to the west in that area, the Ukrainian defenders need to balance the risk of using the thermal power plant as a new defense in the western portion of Kurakhove city. The capture of Stari Terny also poses a threat to the Ukrainian troops in the semi-encirclement south of Kurakhove near Uspanivka. Mr. Gurets suspects that there is an ongoing withdrawal in that area. This he calls the most tense area of the front.
They're running out of time, space, and people. Night is killing time for drones. Russia advancing too fast here, south of Pokrovsk in the east.
Over the past week, Russian forces completed the capture of Petrivka, Pustinka, and Zovty, advancing to within 2 kilometers of Shevchenko. However, taking Shevchenko will not be easy, as it is well protected by the Solonenka River. Before launching an assault, Russian troops must secure a bridgehead across the river, which requires capturing the area between Novosilka and Lysivka, a task likely to occupy them throughout December. Simultaneously, Russian forces are advancing westward. Over the week, they expanded their control near Chumatsky, formerly known as Pushkine, but their progress has been minimal, and they have not fully captured the village. The broader objective is to reach the Pokrovsk-Kurakhove highway across an 8-kilometer stretch between Novosilka and Novo-Olenivka. If successful, this would complicate logistics for both the Kurakhove front and Velika Novosilka. Currently, the closest Russian troops are just 3.5 kilometers from the highway, advancing on Novosilka after capturing Zovty. Even in the most pro-Ukrainian countries, there is a sense of alarm about the Russian advance toward Velika Novosilka. The British Ministry of Defense, as reported in the Newsweek newspaper, described the town as a linchpin of Ukraine's front line, and that Russian forces are attacking behind established Ukrainian defenses and threatening the primary logistics routes to the town. Even the ISW, who many of you prefer that I refrain from citing, said on Tuesday that, and I quote, Russian forces were coming closer to enveloping the town and were putting Ukraine's supply lines into its Dnipro and Zaporizhia regions in jeopardy. To the south, Russian forces have seized parts of the Mori-Yali-Shaitanka interfluve and are advancing toward Makarivka and Blahudatny. Their goal is to force Ukrainian troops off the left bank of the Mori-Yali River to create a wider approach to the village. To the north, Russian troops have pushed into Novi Komar, effectively capturing it. This opens a path to attack Velika Novosilka from the north. Holding the eastern part of the village under these conditions will be extremely challenging for the Ukrainian armed forces. Despite these threats, Ukraine has an opportunity to establish a stable defensive line along the river and secure the western side of the village. The defense of Velika Novosilka depends heavily on maintaining supply routes. Currently, only the Huliapol road remains intact. Russian forces are focusing their efforts on Rivnpopil and Novodarivka to sever this critical route. The battles for these areas will determine the fate of Velika Novosilka. The situation in Russia's KURSK region remains tense but under the control of Ukrainian forces. On the Eastern Front, the defense forces continue to repel Russian attacks, often drawing them into fire traps as demonstrated several times near Pokrovsk. This area features large gray zones which allow Ukrainian troops to conduct maneuver warfare. The northern flank remains stable except for minor adjustments northwest of Pokrovsk, where Ukrainian forces withdrew near Kremyanoe to straighten the front line and improve defensive efficiency. The western flank, however, is the most unstable. Here, Russian forces have captured Darino, forcing Ukrainian troops to retreat south and east of the village. Intense fighting is also ongoing near Novosilka, where Russian forces are attempting to penetrate Ukrainian defenses and advance toward Malaya Lochnia. Both sides are determined to hold their ground, as control of this area is strategically critical and could significantly impact the KURSK front as a whole.
Бабусь, да? Що вона скаже? Грузовителі прийшли. Гуманітарна допомога.
Какие вы освободители? Пол деревни расстреляли.
А як ще з Ростою поводитися?
Не нужно мне от вас ничего, сволочи.
Ручня йобана, їж.
Уходите, уходите, я уже столько насмотрелась.
Ну, дура стара. Все одно
Столько
всіх положимо.
натворили. Сволочи, мне терять нечего. Убирайтесь, забирайте все, уходите. Все равно победа будет за нами.